So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Greater Southern Gold Coast Chamber of Commerce, it's a pleasure to welcome you all to this Meet the Candidates event for the Queensland State Election 2020. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are our candidates for Currumbin. So, you'll each get a minute. We'll be starting with Mr. Logan. Mr. Logan will not be answering questions. However, at the end of the debate, you're encouraged to catch up with Mr. Logan and ask those questions if you'd like. Mr. Logan, you have a minute.
Thank you. I'm Ian Logan. I'm pro-business and entrepreneurs. The private sector provides all taxation for the public sector of government and civil service, including their salaries. But it's now decimated. Businesses and jobs destroyed and homes will be lost. This is unacceptable while the public sector remains immune. Prime Ministers, state premiers, MPs, civil servants, councillors lose nothing. I call on all to take a 25% pay cut. Otherwise, the oft-touted slogan, "We are all in this together," is simply not true. It's just propaganda. If elected, I would commit to a 50% pay cut. Equally, I am appalled at federal government policy driving Virgin into bankruptcy without any care for its 11,000 workforce, when a tiny proportion of its $500 billion budget would have saved it as an asset to be resold in the future. CASA is also of concern, having abandoned control of flight time limitations, which were supposed to prevent crew fatigue. They must be reintroduced. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. We're going to move down to the opposite side of the table to TRACY TAKACS-THORNE.
I'm TRACY TAKACS-THORNE. I've been a long-time resident in the Currumbin electorate of over 50 years. Why am I standing? I'm a deeply concerned citizen. Our governments have sold us out. The not-so-fab four are all complicit in this. They've sold our water, our farms, our minerals. We should have $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund. We don't. 2020, it means perfect vision. You may think I'm a seed in the wind, but people are opening their eyes, and there is an army rising with me. What I'll do for my electorate, I will stand and fight for my community's well-being and rights. I will be their voice and be in service to my people. We'll stop rampant development and halt unsafe technology till proven otherwise. Stop the sellout of Australia. We can't live overseas and own businesses, own land. Why here? We need informed medical consent for our human rights. Clean up crime, stop destroying the family unit, and shine a light on the 90-year suppression orders covering top-flight people in our government, judiciary and police.
Thank you. Dr. Stuckey.
Hi, I'm Dr. Richard Stuckey. During my 40 years practicing as a family GP and a solo business owner in Coolangatta, I focused on the more challenging areas of medicine, those including mental health, autism, aged care and terminal illness. My long-standing interest in the voluntary assisted dying debate prompted me to join the Doctors for Assisted Dying. I'm advocating on several specific health issues, including the voluntary assisted dying, more palliative care available to every Queenslander regardless of where they lived, better mental health support and improvement in the aged care, particularly in the wage equality and staffing ratios. One thing is for certain, we will all die. COVID will pass, the economy will recover, but people will still get terminal illness. They deserve a choice in how, when and where they die. Locally, I support heavy rail to the airport, thorough community consultation for light rail routes, holding the government to account, a cross-border commissioner and increased funding to the Currumbin Wildlife Sanctuary.
Thank you. Peter Burgoyne.
Hello, I'm Dr. Peter Burgoyne. I'm honoured to be the candidate for the Greens for Currumbin. I live in the Currumbin Valley with my wife and my youngest son. I've run a business for 25 years, but in addition to that, I've acted as an advisor and consultant for the United Nations, the federal government, main roads, criminology, law and order, social services. We have all suffered under COVID. There's been no doubt about it. Small businesses have suffered more than most. But it will be small businesses that will lead the recovery. People are attracted here because of the beauty and diversity of our environment. We have to protect that in order to preserve our future. I will encourage all businesses to move towards a renewable vision of the future, where Currumbin will be the jewel and the Gold Coast will be the eco-capital of Australia.
Thank you. Mrs. Anna Palmer.
Hello, my name is Anna Palmer. I'd like to thank the Greater Southern Gold Coast Chamber of Commerce for giving us this opportunity to meet you all. I've lived on the Gold Coast in the past 14 years with my family. Prior to that, I lived on the Gold Coast when I completed my senior studies at the Gold Coast TAFE. I then went on to become an accountant and a solicitor. I'm standing in this election because I believe our state borders should be open and should be open now. This is because the closures are causing heartless and senseless impact on our families and are killing our businesses. This is particularly obvious in this electorate of Currumbin, which is on the border and where the Gold Coast Airport is. So the flow and effect on our businesses is very obvious. So that's my position. Thank you very much.
Mrs. CAMPRADT.
Obviously it's been a tough year and we have serious economic challenges ahead. And the question is, which path do we take? Do we say that government is a luxury that we can't afford and it's survival of the fittest and we all get out of the way? Or do we make the choice that government has a really strong part to play, that we need to put the jobs and money where it matters most, we invest in our communities? Do we stand together and look at what we've achieved? I think some of us have done very well out of COVID. I'm very proud of our community and how we've stood together, how we've leaned in, how we've supported each other. But we haven't done that without the support of government investing and putting the money where it needs to put money to invest in infrastructure, in jobs. These are important in our community, and at the moment, more than ever, government is important. We need a government that listens, that thinks and acts. And we need community leaders like you, that we stand together, that speak up and stand up for our community. And in the context of this election, I think that we do need strong, fierce, passionate local advocate, and obviously that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Glenn Wadsworth.
Yeah, g'day. I'm Glenn Wadsworth. Born in Brisbane, of working class family. Moved to the Gold Coast 45 years ago. Been here ever since in the Burleigh and Currumbin electorates. Run my own construction caper. Employ peaking 300 at the moment. It's only about 93. What other important things could I dribble on about? Look, you know, I got into politics because I was a bit disenchanted, disappointed with the major parties and how they go about things. And I'd like to, if I had the opportunity, reform it. Get rid of the rubbish. Then, you know, there's bogged down in way too much rubbish. And I use rubbish for expletives at the moment. So, you know, that's pretty much it from my point of view. One Nation allowed me the platform and I thank them for that. And look, there's a heap of good candidates here, so you people have a lot of good choice.
Thank you, Glenn. Mrs. Gerber.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Gerber and I'm the LNP member for Currumbin. I am 100% committed to my Currumbin community. I am committed to making it easier for small business and business in Currumbin to grow jobs and to expand. I am committed to reducing crime in Currumbin. I am a former federal prosecutor. As a prosecutor, I prosecuted bikies, pedophiles, people smugglers and drug importers. So I know what it takes to reduce crime in our community, and I'm committed to that. I am committed to busting congestion in our community. It is important, I think, that you know a little bit about my background so that you understand how much Currumbin means to me. I'm a born and bred local. I was born at the Alamanda Private Hospital in Southport. I was a volunteer surf lifesaver at Currumbin Vikings and achieved my bronze medallion there as a junior. I live in Currumbin Waters with my husband. My daughter goes to the Eleanor Estate School. I am 100% committed to my Currumbin community, and that is why I'm standing, because I want Currumbin to get their fair share.
Thank you. Ooh, it goes by so quick. Okay, let's dive into the fun now. Starting with our first question, where the topic is business friendly. If elected, how specifically would you help small business in your electorate of Currumbin? And I would like to start that question with Mrs. Anna Palmer.
Well, thank you for the question. First of all, I'd like to say that we are the only party that's standing in this election that's advocating for the opening of the borders. We think the single biggest impact on our businesses at the moment is the border closures and all the other COVID-related measures that go with it. Secondly, my husband, with my support, is challenging the border closures in the High Court, which will be decided on the 3rd and 4th of November, just past the election. We think that's probably what's prompted the state government to bring forward a few more relaxations in the measures. If I'm to be elected, I believe that I can bring more attention to this issue, to this electorate. As we all saw that just the announcement of my standing as a candidate brought here the Prime Minister of Australia and the Premier. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Burgoyne, what are your thoughts on this question?
There's a lot of money being spent by the federal government and the state government. There's a total of $7 billion for our economy, but there will be an extra $249 million promised for small businesses. I'm going to ensure that Currumbin gets its fair share of it. I want to see the Southern University develop an innovation unit which will help local businesses develop new products and markets. I'd like to remove payroll tax. I'd like to ensure that local businesses are not disadvantaged compared with overseas suppliers for taxes, and make sure that overseas suppliers of services and goods pay their fair share. I would like to assist resorts and leases install solar energy so they're more efficient. As electric cars become standard, I'd like to install intelligent meters to enable us to profit from using those batteries as energy banks. So let's move ahead.
Let's hear from the second doctor on the panel. Dr. Stuckey, your thoughts?
Speaking about small business, trying to stand for small business, you need to have been a small business person, and I owned and ran a small medical practice called a micro business for 30 or so years. Currumbin thrives on the thousands of small businesses located here, as I'm one. I believe we need to set realistic and measured target for reducing red tape, maybe 20% over a 4-year term. I believe in supporting initiatives like the PBC Alliance, which was started in 2013 with the aim of to partner students and small business and gain meaningful employment. I believe in the actively support local business campaigns. And I believe in creating a localised business advisory group, perhaps within the Chamber, to identify and report on the red tape that is holding small business back. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. TAKACS-THORNE.
I would also advocate for opening the borders immediately. We live in a cross-border town. There's people in Tweed that can't get over the border to do their job. I have a small business that we started from scratch, run for 15 years now, and I just can't say it enough. It's imperative. Australians are big travellers. They travel a lot. Our outer borders shut. There's a whole wealth of people in here that want to come to Queensland, especially to get away from CAMPRADT down in Victoria. So I say, open the borders now. We also need to get rid of regressive taxes, payroll tax, my God. People can be employing more people. That's one of my important things. Tourism going, like I said, let's get people here. Let's market our coast. We're nearly summer. We should be teeming with people. And also the Shop Small initiative. Small business is our backbone. Let's give them things to work with. Thank you.
Thank you. KAYLEE.
Thanks. There's no doubt that COVID has had a big impact on our small businesses, on our tourist-based economy here on the southern Gold Coast. And I think that some of those early decisions on putting money into small business adaptation grants have been very welcomed by a lot of small businesses, 223 of them in the Currumbin electorate alone, nearly $2 million. And I think we need to see more of that as people come out of this COVID into a COVID recovery period. And we can have a COVID strong economic recovery because we have taken the health advice of the experts very seriously and ensured that we have remained open for business here in Queensland. I have been speaking to a lot of businesses in the last 6 months. COVID hasn't affected everybody the same, it's affected everybody very differently, and I've been very proud of the way that our local businesses have adapted quickly, showed innovation, been quite agile. Yes, it's important that we look after the ones that are doing it tough, but I think we do that by talking to the experts, and that's the people in this room and people like you as well, and starting with the solutions from there.
Thank you. Mr. WADSWORTH.
Well, look, I don't know about, I live at Coolangatta. It's heavily affected by the border restrictions, as is many businesses there and on the Gold Coast. And certainly, I advocate for opening the borders immediately. There'd be, you know, maybe some restrictions on some Victorian hotspots, but by and large, let's open it domestically and let people move around our country. It seems to me that this whole COVID mess has identified the varied levels of differing government and the fools running them. So, you know, that's why I'm here, to offer an alternative to that and, you know, hopefully get over the red tape and rubbish that goes on and get straight to the point. You know, like if you run a business, you don't go around doing the stuff that these people do. You know, you get into it, you sort the stuff and get it happening. And that's what I think our country lacks, our state lacks, even local government. With that, I'm gone.
Thank you. Deserves a round of applause, that one. Mrs. Gerber.
Let's talk specifics. There are 3 specific ways an LNP government will help small business in Currumbin. The first, no new taxes and deliver a budget within the first 100 days. Small business continually tell me the biggest impediment to them growing and expanding their business and giving jobs to people in Currumbin is taxes. So no new taxes helps that. Delivering a budget in the first 100 days. We know this state Labor government is not delivering a budget. The LNP is committed to that, so business has certainty to grow. The next specific thing that we can do, $300 rego rebate. Every small business, every person in this room that owns a vehicle will get $300 back in their pocket for every registered vehicle they own. That's cash injection into our economy, and that helps our small businesses that might have vehicles. The third thing is we will reduce electricity cost by 20% for manufacturing businesses in Currumbin. There are 217 manufacturing businesses in Currumbin.
Thank you, Laura. So now moving to the next topic of the morning, and KAYLEE, we're going to start with yourself on this one. Skilled workforce, if elected, how would you ensure that your electorate of Currumbin has a suitably skilled workforce to meet the needs of local business, and can you provide some specific examples?
Well, I think that education is where it starts, and it's really important that we continue to fund our state school system adequately to ensure that every child has every opportunity. Traineeships, apprenticeships, these are important pathways into jobs, and of course we've got to make sure that the jobs are there so that these kids particularly can get into those jobs, and that's that targeted investment that I was talking about into places where we need them. Of course, the announcement that we made this week around building another TAFE at Robina was a welcome announcement. I think TAFE is those things, and then we've got to work with businesses to find out exactly you know, what are the skills of the future. We talk to kids about the skills of the future and ensure that our schooling system reflects that as well, so that we remain, you know, cutting edge as well as doing all the stuff that we need to do. But I think that future is about the kids, and it's about, starts with the education, and that's in schools. We've got to continue to invest properly in schools.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Let's go to Mrs. Gerber.
Thank you. Again, let's talk specifics. So the LNP has specifically committed to an economic recovery agency, a Department of Grant. That Department of Grant has many functions, but one of its major functions is to develop a skills training council. Now, every small business and industry will have a seat at that table, and the idea of that is to make sure that we are identifying skill gaps in Currumbin, across Queensland, and that we are filling those, we are putting resources into those gaps, and that we are making sure that those gaps are skilled so that we have employers and employees with the skill set in the Currumbin electorate to be able to service business. The other specific thing that we have committed to in Currumbin is $100,000 to Elanora State High School. Now, Elanora State High School has a trade centre to train the high school students, and they don't have tools in that trade centre. So we've committed $100,000 to be able to skill high school students in skill sets that might be needed to fill the gaps in jobs in the Currumbin electorate.
Thank you. Mrs. TAKACS-THORNE.
Okay, for me, again, it's open borders, because unless we can get people in our state, it doesn't matter how many people you skill, they need to have a place to work. I would also offer initiatives to the smaller entrepreneur, the people that set up their barbershops with coffee to sell. These are the people that offer employment. Small business may offer anywhere from 1 to 100 people or more. We need to get them supported. Tax reform. We need to get rid of regressive taxes. No, not cut them, we need to get rid of them. And if you're saying, where are we going to get the money? Let's stop giving 90 million to Hamas, which is a terrorist organisation, or 128 million to the Clinton Foundation. Let's put it into our own country for a change, and let's get our country dynamic again.
Dr. Stuckey.
parts of this question I felt morphed into the first question, but we need to train our people who live here, and to that end I would push for ensuring funding and grants for businesses like Gold Coast Trade Centre right here in Currumbin. And this will offer a range of courses: mechanics, horticulture, carpentry, electricity. And as I said before, the community needs to support its own, and we should be able to set up our own apprentice trainings and setups to train local people to do local jobs in the local community.
Thank you. Dr. Burgoyne, how will you ensure that the electorate of Currumbin has a suitably skilled workforce?
Our schools have worked hard to ensure that young people are job ready with Cert 2 courses, school-based apprentices. Let's support them. Let's give them the funding they need. We've been let down by the TAFE reductions. We need to ensure that all the training courses that people need, the businesses need in this area, are supported within the TAFE system. I would like to ensure that the Coolangatta campus of TAFE has all the resources it needs to train people in tourism, hospitality, English and second language. I'd like to ensure that the trainees are funded to study in the workplace while being supervised by TAFE qualified supervisors. The cost of education should not prevent people from being educated to enter the workforce. We ensure that everybody should be able to afford to get back into the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wadsworth.
Here we go again. Okay, look, I mean, in the 25 years I've been running my own caper, I reckon I've probably put through 200, 300 apprentices. I've probably got 15 at the moment. I've run a few school-based apprentices. Reality is, if you want to train it for the business, they need to work for the business, to be trained by the business. Whilst TAFE and education is great, it's attitude. Young people's attitude is a vast majority, right? They come in there with, you know, with great expectations, but don't really want to do the hard yakka. So, you know, they first of all identify the ones that want to work, right? Then nurture them, skill them in-house, assisted by TAFE, schools and others. How's that?
Well, you dropped rubbish real quick, didn't you? Yeah. Mrs. Palmer.
In relation to a skilled workforce, first, I believe we need to listen to the small businesses in the community and see what type of skills they require in this post-COVID world. I know I myself needed to get some extra computer training. But before we can do all that, we really need to revitalise the local economy by opening the borders and looking into these restrictions like the 4 square metre rule. Our party, as such, is the only party which is calling for the abolition of the payroll tax, because we believe it is a tax on jobs. And rather than taxing people creating employment, we need government to provide strategies for training and retention of the workforce. And this can be best done by bringing this issue forward at this election. Thank you.
The next topic to be discussed is smart infrastructure. So the Chamber views an integrated transport policy as being crucial. So what transport projects will, within the Currumbin electorate, and what timeline will you commit to?
In relation to infrastructure, we believe that the southern region of the Gold Coast has not been given the attention it really has deserved in a long time, as it is further and further away from Brisbane and where the state government is seated. We believe that this post-COVID revitalisation, a lot of the investment can be done in to bring forward and fast-track these infrastructure transport projects to come down to Coolangatta and to facilitate transport to places in this electorate. We need more publicity to demand this from the state government now, and a faster commitment with them, with a final timeline rather than leaving it into the never-never. Thank you.
KAYLEE.
Thanks. Well, we do have an integrated transport plan for the Southern Gold Coast. It starts with the $1 billion upgrade of the M1, which is happening at the moment and has been accelerated under the Unite and Recover package. between Burleigh and Tugun. The heavy rail has to be a priority. I was pleased to see the federal government make an announcement around looking at the business case for fast rail between Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Light rail is contentious in some areas, and we do need to work with the community to make sure we get that right, but we have got a commitment to the business case and the community consultation process around that. And of course, it's also the Ocean Way, seen as probably one of the single best assets in our community, about continuing the Ocean Way along the Gold Coast as well as here locally. But it is about an integrated transport plan. Yesterday we made an announcement about electric buses running along the 777 route, built here in Burleigh, on the 777 route, so that's fantastic too. So we do have a very good, strong, integrated transport plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Stuckey.
Okay, in considering a integrated transport plan, we need to think about rail, heavy and light, and air. Heavy rail keeps getting pushed back despite millions already spent on the planning. The tunnel is already built under the runway. It's ready to go. The extensive planning studies identified the route way back in 2001, when the predicted completion date to the airport was 2011. No movement since the Varsity station was built in 2009. Successive governments have dropped the ball. Residents indicate they wanted heavy rail above light rail and get trucks off the M1. Yes, it's expensive, but it won't get any cheaper the longer we leave it. Light rail should proceed south, but only with thorough community consultation, particularly with the difficult areas like Palm Beach, Burleigh, and obviously with air, the quicker the borders are open, the quicker domestic planes can get in, and a lot more people come in them than cars. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Burgoyne, let's hear your commitment on an integrated transport policy.
I agree with the previous speakers. We need an integrated transport plan, or we've got one. We need to implement it. That's the problem. Cities with good public transport thrive better than ones that rely solely on private transport. We need to ensure that businesses can be accessed by their customers and for their resources. We, as Greens, promote a free public transport system that we can which we can pay for by reducing the costs from collection of fares and from mining royalties. With respect to light rail, it needs more consultation, but it will be a great advantage and it should connect to the airport. We make sure that businesses don't suffer while it's being constructed. I'd like to see, I'm going to talk about the heavy rail in the context of the Gold Coast Airport, but let's get moving.
Thank you. Ms. TAKACS-THORNE.
Hi, I came to the Gold Coast in 1967. Back then there was one lone road that ran along the coast. The rest of it was just bush. No one had any vision then. It was the era of the cowboys, and it was just development, development, development. Move forward to now, and what are we looking at? We're still looking at the same things. Light rail, which nobody wants down on the southern end. We don't have a connection to our airport. Anywhere you travel in the world, to any cosmopolitan city, and what do? You get off at the airport in an air bridge, not on the tarmac like some third world country, then you go underground. Why don't we investigate the use of an underground railway? They've got big machines. God knows, people in the know we can tunnel. You get a big machine that goes underground, it doesn't disrupt anything. We're wedged between the sea and the mountains. We've got no more room. The M1 is already getting extended, it's already at capacity. We need to be thinking and have a vision for the future.
Thank you. Mr. Wadsworth.
Okay, for those of you who are old like me, when I was a kid I caught a train to Southport. For mine, the government was not thinking. Like, this is the problem with our political system. It's 4 years, so you can only think 4 years in advance. Whereas some fools 50 years ago decided it was uneconomical to have that train, so they mothballed it. And then 20, 30 years later, they spent squillions putting it back. Right? So, to me, the whole transport thing, and it's covered, like, you know, everyone's talking about different things, so I don't need to bat on about that. But the light rail needs fair dinkum a poll on that, Burleigh and Currumbin, to find out what they really think, right? Because it's just so dividing. In politics, you can't please all of the people all of the time. And that's certainly the case with the light rail. Georgie was banging on about running it out to Ravenna and then heavy rail to Coolangatta. Makes sense.
Fair dinkum. On over to you, Laura Gerber.
The LNP has a comprehensive plan for transport on the southern end of the Gold Coast. And it includes a business case that puts all options on the table: light rail, heavy rail, and buses, because we have to get this right. We will only get one shot at doing this, and we must do it right, and it must be done with appropriate consultation with the community. The community must have a voice in this, and that is what the LNP intends to do, because right now what I'm hearing from the community is that they feel like they haven't been appropriately consulted in relation to the light rail. And I know that some people here have said that the community doesn't want the light rail, but the results of my biggest community survey show that 68% of people in Currumbin want the light rail. So that is why all options must be on the table: heavy rail, light rail and buses, but that is also why the community must be consulted. Just pointing to a specific, the LNP has committed to a $4 million upgrade of Currumbin Creek Road. Now that is a transport project, that is infrastructure that we've...
The Chamber believes that we need a central transport node, and that could potentially be the Gold Coast Airport. So my question now for our candidates, to get into the specifics of what you've just committed to. The Gold Coast Airport is crucial to the southern Gold Coast tourism sector. What will you do to increase flights to and from the Gold Coast? I'm going to start with TRACY TAKACS-THORNE.
Okay, we need to upgrade our airport to a world-class airport. We need to get our air bridges open. There's nothing worse than coming into Coolangatta in a deluge and having to walk across the tarmac. It's not a good first impression. I would also work with the Airport Corporation and offer airlines good slots so that they actually use our airport in favour of going to Brisbane. We're a tourist town and we need to get the people here, because this is what gets our businesses going. And again, I'd hark back to the last question of buses. Anywhere I've travelled, I've never caught a bus. You get off at the airport, you go on an underground, it moves a lot of people very fast, very cost effectively and safely. It's the way of the future, and I don't know why anyone's not actually looking at this method of transport. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think there's someone on this panel who will know a lot about airports, and that's Mr. Logan. Mr. Logan, would you like to answer the question? What's your plan?
I don't have a plan, but what I have is a cousin, and the cousin is directly involved in the actual development of the redevelopment, shall we say, of the Gold Coast Airport at the moment. He's one of the lead architects in the design that was going on to improve the airport. And all I would say about it is that the airport, as we know, is a crucial point in this specific area, and it spreads people out all over and into New South Wales, of course. But it's crucial that transport from the airport, like other people have said, is important to take people away, not just by the airport, but to keep people around the airport and spread them out in the local community to the small businesses that you good people are trying to make work. And whereas our colleague down there wants an underground, I think that's vastly too expensive. And what you need is these smart buses, where you can have more traffic on the roads and they look after themselves because they don't hit anything. It's as simple as that. You use smart technology.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. Dr. Burgoyne, what's your goals and plan for the airport?
Well, I'll also extend the heavy rail to the airport and to Coolangatta and the light rail. I will ensure that will ensure that people can get to their holiday destinations and businesses can get here and goods can move quickly. I'll be setting a working group to facilitate connections between the Gold Coast and international and domestic locations to promote the Gold Coast as an airport, as a transport hub between Queensland and Asian destinations. This will open up opportunities for supporting businesses here in Currumbin. So let's go for it.
There we go, call to arms. Laura?
Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room, because our airport has been detrimentally affected by our domestic borders. The LNP has committed to only maintaining borders as long as is absolutely necessary. We must follow the health advice, but we must do it in a transparent way, in a way that is consistent and in a way that is fair. So we know that that has detrimentally affected our airport, and the LNP has looked at that, and we will only maintain domestic borders for absolutely as long as is necessary. We've seen the politicisation of the ACT border. That border was closed for 48 days when there was zero community transmission. Our airport no doubt suffered as a result of that. That is tourism, that is flights that were no doubt lost because there was an unnecessary border closure there. Now, it is archaic that our airport is not connected by a rail. We need to connect some sort of rail to our airport, light rail, heavy rail, whatever it is absolutely archaic that people have to get on a bus to be able to access our beautiful Gold Coast and our beautiful hinterland.
Mr. Wadsworth.
Well, the airport's something I do know a little bit about because we're on site there with Lend-Lease, building the new international terminal, even though there's no international punters coming. But it also has air bridges. Yes, so look, I mean, as far as the airport, you need to open the borders domestically first, because no planes are going to come here if they don't, other than internal ones, and there's bugger all flights that go from Coolangatta north. So, you know, if you want to do something for the airport, let's open the borders.
Dr. Stuckey.
So clearly, as virtually everyone said, the only way to increase flights to and from the Gold Coast is to open the borders. And I think with the health advice we need to look at what are the criteria. And if we look at a criteria in New South Wales of no community transmission of COVID in 28 days, we're going to be waiting a long time before we open them. So opening the borders obviously will help that, improving the, upgrading the airport, getting the air bridges on the domestic flights, and lobbying Tourism and Events Queensland and Tourism Australia to include Gold Coast in its marketing campaigns. I gather in a recent one, I think the Gold Coast was left out. Not that it matters now because no one can get here, but it will in the future. So we need to be on their advertising campaigns. We need to open the borders, as virtually everyone here has said.
Mrs. Palmer, what's your plan to bring flights to the Gold Coast Airport?
As most other candidates have identified, the most immediate and most important thing we can do to increase flights into Coolangatta is to open the borders and open them now. As we've seen, the two major parties are not committed to this, despite the COVID virus being contained within Australia, and this is due to the national Australian borders being shut, and we were probably one of the first or the first country in the world to close our borders to contain the virus. This, we believe, has largely been achieved looking at the per capita data. So we cannot wait until every state election out there in Australia is done and over with in order to open our borders. Like, for example, in WA, they've just told us how they're going to wait until 31st of March next year when their election is to open their borders. So we need to all open our borders now to bring travellers from interstate into Queensland. Thank you.
Thank you. KAYLEE.
Yes, so I'm very confident that the Gold Coast Airport has a strong plan about what they're doing down there, and they are doing a lot of development at the moment. We're also funding, part funding, upgrading the southern entrance. While the people are not there, it's a good time to get on and, as Glenn would say, crack on and do some really good projects, which we're doing. Interestingly, Brisbane Airport is the busiest airport in Australia right now. And the reason it's the busiest airport in Australia is because we have had such a good economic response after the COVID crisis, and we've been able to do that because we have taken the advice of the health experts first. And I know everyone keeps saying open the border, open the border, open the border, but look what's happened in other parts of the world. Yes, we've managed this crisis very carefully, and because we've done that, we are now on a strong path to economic recovery, and I'm very confident that coupled with investment in projects like at the airport and jobs, we're going to have a strong economic comeback. I'm very confident of that.
Dr. Burgoyne, we're going to be starting with yourself with this question. The topic of discussion is sustainable practices. So if elected, what eco-project will you commit to that protects our pristine and diverse environment and drives local business growth in your electorate?
Well, I will work with local community groups such as Gecko, Surfrider and this Chamber of Commerce to ensure the sustainable growth of business while protecting the environment and protecting it from further destruction. It is environmental diversity which underlies our economy by attracting people and providing the resources we need. We'll create categories of awards for sustainable business and innovative design for Currumbin businesses. I will protect koala habitat and ensure that new habitats are linked by vegetation corridors. I will extend preventive hazard reduction of burning and support our local rural fire service. Without a good environment, the Gold Coast will not prosper. So we need to encourage people to come here because we have the most beautiful place that we can imagine. Let's go for it.
Thank you. Glenn.
Yeah, well, I must admit this isn't an area of my expertise, all right? So, you know, we'll just go along with what the other guys say. Look, I mean, you know, everybody is into recycling and doing their bit for the environment. You know, can we do more? Probably. At what cost? Like, everyone's talked about a whole heap of things, great ideas, but somebody's got to pay. And last I looked, we were squillions in debt, and we keep printing money, you know. Somewhere in there, we have to have economic management along with greeny ideas and environmental stuff that works together.
Mrs. TAKACS-THORNE.
I'm coming at this question from a multi-pronged level. Going back to early this year when we had the wildfires, which were brought about by not backburning effectively, we've lost nearly 3 billion of our native wildlife. It's a shocking figure. And we've also dumped an extraordinary amount of toxic flame retardant on our soils, which is going to have a really detrimental effect. Move forward, I live in the Tally Valley, there's the Currumbin Valley, we've both got catastrophic fire signs. They've taken away our cool weather burn teams. I would reinstate them. There's jobs for a start, but we need to get our cool weather burning going again and working hand in hand with our Indigenous that know all about cultural burning. The other thing I'd like to talk about is both valleys have world-class spa and health resorts, and we're coming at them with the 5G towers. There's been unclassified documents that said 43 years ago that this 5mm 60 Hz frequency is detrimental to all living creatures. How do you sell a spa package with that standing outside?
Thank you. Dr. Stuckey.
Queensland moved slowly in this field. We moved from South Australia in 1987, and we were surprised when we got here that there were no rainwater tanks. There was no container recycling. There were very few people who had compost, and we still used single-use plastic bags at the supermarkets. Go forward 30 years, all of those things which were part of the South Australian sustainable practices were done back then. Our beaches are a local and national international draw card. We want to, we support the legislation to put in stone the World Surfing Reserve. We will totally reject the large concerts, etc., like the one that was proposed with 35,000 people last year, but not for smaller things, smaller events. We'd push for more open green space, increase funding to Currumbin Wildlife Sanctuary, and each of us need to do our own little bit, and we'd be a more sustainable area, and the RSL are terrific at doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Palmer.
Well, I believe the Currumbin electorate has a very unique economy, environment and attractions, and obviously the economy is dependent on the natural environment here, and that's why we're all here. My family and I love spending time here, but I can say that I do not know much about the sustainable projects that are currently carried on. And that's why, if you're elected, the first thing I can do is to listen to businesses about what is there currently here, what is being proposed, and how we can move forward with the best projects that can be carried on in a sustainable way so that we can protect our beautiful and diverse environment for the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Mrs. Gerber.
I believe that promoting tourist activities in nature is one of the best ways that we can both protect our natural environment and support our tourism industry. Because those businesses that are promoting, that thrive off tourism in nature have a vested interest in then protecting those natural assets upon which they depend upon which their business depends upon. So that I absolutely support ecotourism, and I think it's something that we definitely need to get behind. And one specific example that I can point to that I am supporting is the Currumbin Wildlife Sanctuary and the Currumbin Wildlife Hospital. They have a project, a partnership with the government that they're proposing, which involves state land at Currumbin, and they propose to turn that into a koala rehabilitation site and a training site. Now, this ecotourism project will drive more people to the sanctuary. Can I just say that 86% of respondents to my biggest community survey believe that we do need to be doing more for koala rehabilitation.
Mrs. CAMPRADT.
There's no doubt that we live in paradise, and we have to make sure that as we move forward that we don't kill the golden goose. I think the World Surf Reserve, protecting that with legislation is an important step. Working with Currumbin Wildlife Sanctuary to ensure that we continue to promote businesses like that and support the Currumbin project, which we're committed to doing. Preserving and protecting areas through good legislation, making sure that we look after the habitat that we have and the gold valleys that we have and the waterways that we have. Sand dunes is the perfect example of what happens in an area when we live like this, where people want to come in and exploit what we have for their own benefit with no benefit to our community, and in fact long-term detrimental effects to our community. So we have to ensure that we're encouraging ecotourism in a very practical way that builds business, supports business, but also supports our local community for future generations.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give a big round of applause to our candidates for the seat of Currumbin?